Tower Bridge. There it is, and of course, right next to that, the Tower of London, where many kings and some of the wives of kings were executed. It has a lot of history there.
It certainly does. And we're here, of course, for the royal wedding of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, which takes place just one day away now. Coming up in this hour, we're going to have an exclusive interview with Sarah's royal father-in-law-to-be, Prince Philip. And we're also going to be having Joan Rivers give us a little insight into the people called the Sloane Rangers. Now, they're the yuppie in-crowd here in London that claim both Lady Di and Sarah Ferguson as members. Also in the first hour, David Frost, and we're going to hear as well from Jane Seymour.
Right now, though, we are going to go to Washington, where Kathleen Sullivan is standing
The Tower of
by.
London. There's been a fortified camp on this piece of land ever since the Romans ruled Great Britain 2,000 years ago. They call it the Tower of London, but it's actually 20 towers in all, one central tower surrounded by rings of walls and other towers and moats. This, in fact, was at one time a moat. It was 20 feet of water. This is the youngest of the tower's walls. It was built back in 1275, a mere youngster. Let's take a walk inside the Tower of London and back into history. Now, back in the old days, if you approached the tower from the Thames River, you'd enter generally through Traitor's Gate, which is a bit down that way, through the outer walls. This was another moat. Obviously, it's been filled in now. When you think about it, this is really a bloody and awful place. Kings and queens and princes have been imprisoned here, murdered here. In fact, right there, inside Wakefield Tower, King Henry VI was murdered. Queen Elizabeth I, when she was a princess, was held prisoner here for a couple of months. Sir Walter Raleigh spent 13 years of his life as a prisoner here. Now, as you come through the outer walls, or the inner walls, you come to the oldest part of the tower, and this is it. This is called the White Tower. It was built back in 1078 by William the Conqueror. He lived inside there. I want to show you one thing. That's the front door right there. You see how high it is off the ground? That's because if you were being, say, attacked inside the tower, you'd chop down the staircase, it would fall away, and you were much safer. Now, a bit later on in the program, Joni London will bring you back here for a more extensive look around the Tower of London, and I'll take you inside the White Tower for a look at the King's Armory, the royal armor, as it were. But right now, it's time to go back to New York.
The banks of the River Thames, just across the river from the Tower of London. Now, that's a place that you didn't want to go into in the old days, because that's where criminals and enemies of the crown were imprisoned and executed. But today, it's really the most popular tourist attraction here in Great Britain, so I felt pretty safe when I took the tour over the weekend.
The Tower of London. For 900 years, since the time of William the Conqueror, it served as a fortress, a palace, a prison. It is literally one of the foundations of British history.
The tower is the cradle of England, in other words. It's our history, you know, from the good points and the bad points, all reflected from the Tower of London.
Chief Yeoman Warder Pop Davis commands that select group of men who for centuries have guarded the Tower of London. What does it take to be a yeoman?
You have to have a sense of humor, you have to be diplomatic, and you have to have patience.
Turn the camera around. Right in the centre, we also have our own private execution site.
Come on, stand there, smile, pretend you're happy. Turn round.
And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it was known in those days, believe it or not, to be a privilege to be executed here.
Where are the crown jewels? In the jewel house, I hope, or I'm out of a job.
While the Tower of London began in 1078 as one tower, over the centuries, the fortress expanded and many more towers were built, each one with a story to tell. Like the Bloody Tower, where, according to William Shakespeare and some historians, Richard III had his two young nephews murdered. Then there's the Beauchamp Tower, for centuries a dreaded state prison.
It also happened to be my home. In a few months' time, with a bit of luck, I shall walk out of that a free man.
The yeomen and their families lived in small houses within the tower walls, and they're not the only ones who live here. For centuries, ravens have been kept at the tower as a symbol of good luck, or so the story goes.
If they leave, the White Tower will crumble, and the monarchy or the empire will fall. Now, in the Second World War, there was a period when there weren't any ravens here in the tower. And as you know, since the Second World War, our empire has started to disintegrate.
In 1101, a dishonest tax collector named Ranulph Lombard was the first prisoner here at the Tower of London. For the next 840 years, kings, queens, nobility of every rank were imprisoned here. right up to 1941, when Rudolf Hess, the German spy, was the last prisoner in the Tower of London. In case you missed the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, you can see it right here at the Tower of London every day at 11:30. The guards, not to be confused with the yeomen, are here really to protect two buildings in particular. The one behind me, that's the Queen's house. That's her official residence when she's here at the Tower of London. And just across the green, the Waterloo block, which houses the crown jewels.
Every day, thousands of visitors gaze upon the crowns and scepters and jewels, the very stuff that dreams and empires are made of. No one will say what they're all worth, but the largest diamond in the collection has been valued at $60 million. When's the last time someone tried to steal the crown jewels?
Well, that'd be Colonel Blood. He had a go at them in 1671. It all ended in disaster, with the orb rolling in the gutter outside our East Gate, and he was captured. But for some reason or other, Charles II eventually pardoned him and pensioned him. And everybody always wonders whether it wasn't just a put-up job.
Of course, no trip to the Tower of London is complete without a visit to the armory in the White Tower, where you'll find one of the world's greatest collections of medieval and Renaissance weapons and armor. It reflects the pride of a nation and of those, like the yeomen, who guard its precious heritage.
All right, now I want to show you something outside of the Tower of London. Look right behind me, right across the river. You see it with the boat passing by? Someone has a sign out there. It says, "Good morning, America. Mom, we made it." So, Mom, if you're watching back home, they're right across the river there, and they made it. And thank you very much to them. We'll be back with the man.
It's 18 minutes past the hour. You know, the royal wedding of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson has a storybook quality to it. Unfortunately, it's taking place in a real world where we always face the threat of international terrorism. Bob Innes of Scotland Yard is in charge of security for the royal family and the visiting dignitaries here, and he talked recently with Steve Fox.
The situation in Britain for the last 12 or so years has been that we live in a constant state of threat. So therefore, when we're considering any public event, then the starting point is irrevocable. We start off with a security event. It used to be in these sort of events, we thought little of security. The situation didn't demand it. Nowadays, when we're talking about a major public event, we're talking about security right from the outset. And the starting point is several points up the scale before we ever start. So that's the situation we're in.
Is it safe for me to assume that the major threat you perceive comes from the Irish Republican Army or from the Libyans?
I think one of the skills that people like me have got to learn, and the people that work for me, is not to be limiting in our thoughts at all. Whether it's one organisation or another organisation that does something, really doesn't matter at all. If we go on...
Tactics wouldn't change with the different organizations?
If we restrict ourselves to that exclusive way of thinking, we can actually miss something that's staring us in the face. Clearly, the component parts of intelligence about this, that, or the other organisation are relevant. Yes, they are relevant. Contingency planning means that one plans for as broad a contingency as possible, not to try and restrict it.
Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson will be traveling in an open glass carriage. Does that create security problems for you?
Yes, it does. It is very difficult for American people and others to understand the nature of our society. We are a totally unarmed society. There is no way that people who have got access to that route have got general access to guns, as in your society. I know it varies from state to state, but there is no way that those people have got general... We don't think about guns like you folk think about guns.
Well, the ordinary citizen doesn't, but the terrorist, one would think, does.
Yes, the arrangements we've made more than counter that. But the arrangements that perhaps my counterparts in New York would have to make to counter the availability of guns in America generally would far outstrip the arrangements that we've got to make to counter the situation that we meet here. I know it's difficult for other folk. You know, the nature of a society is embedded in history, isn't it? And we, by history, are an unarmed society.
What kind of security do you have for First Lady Nancy Reagan?
Part of our job, and I've already seen the American Secret Service agents some weeks ago, part of our job is to reassure them that we're going to take good care of Nancy Reagan. And they are so reassured. And in fact, the arrangements we make are made. We've got the lead responsibility. She is our guest, and her safety is our responsibility. But in the midst of that, we have to reassure the Secret Service guys that we're going to take good care of her. We agreed on what we're going to do some weeks ago, but I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do.
As I understand it, after the wedding, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson are going to travel from the palace to the Royal Hospital by coach. Wouldn't you rather see them travel in a helicopter? Isn't the coach a major problem at that point?
No, I would much rather see them travel by helicopter. What they've said is they'd want to do that. Can you give us the reassurances that we want to enable us to do that? Our job is not to prevent people doing anything, whether it's the royal family or ordinary members of the public. Our job as policemen is to find a way of having people do what they want to do.
But surely there must be times when you have to say to them, our estimation is this is too much of a security risk, don't do it.
This is not such a case.
This is not such a case. You are confident that that's not going to be a problem?
Yes, I am.
And of course, security is a very real concern here, although the British managed to do it in a way so that you don't see it as obviously as you might. You saw a television report last night.
That's right. I was watching the telly, and they had a lot of reports on last night about security measures, so they're obviously concerned about it. And they talked about how all of the trash cans along the route and the mailboxes were being cleaned out and sealed off with these kinds of seals that can't be broken, and all the little telephone boxes, anything that could be considered a containment area.
And of course, they have the sniffer dogs working inside the Abbey where the wedding will take place and outside as well. One of the interesting things being that they actually place things for the dogs to find.
In London.
With Steve Bell.
That's right. Oh, it is so beautiful out here. There you see the Tower Bridge behind us. We are just across the river from the Tower of London, and if you look over there, you can see what is called Traitor's Gate. Now, that was the main entrance from the river, when the river was the easiest means of access to the tower. Later on, when roads improved, though, it became kind of the sneaky way to get in, and of course, that's how it got its name.
And coming up in this half hour, we're going to take a look at the problem of unemployment here in Great Britain. We're also going to get some more wedding tidbits from Nigel Dempster. And right now, we're going to get a tidbit from our Joan Rivers.
A lot of you are probably as curious as I am to find out how a commoner such as Sarah Ferguson got to marry into royalty. Well, I'll be back in a little bit to tell you who these commoners are. This is Joan Rivers on festive Bond Street, where all London is going crazy. It could be me.
Oh, Joan, what can I say?
On the Thames with the magnificent Tower Bridge behind me. We're aboard the Cabby this morning, a sailing barge built back in the 1920s, believed to be the last of her kind ever built. You know, it's been said that every drop of the Thames is liquid history, and it's true. Ever since prehistoric times, this river has served as a highway, and you can see that the city is just built up along the banks. There are wharves, pubs, parks, beautiful old buildings, fish markets, and you know, you've heard us say it over and over again that London is just so full of history and romance, and it really is. All you have to do is be here, and you really get a sense of that. And like so many other great cities, London owes its very existence to this river. Down through the ages, the Thames has provided work, wealth, and a passageway to the ocean. Britain had ruled the seas for centuries, colonizing the world. Her royal fleet was unmatched, the strongest of its kind. We're coming up on the HMS Belfast, which was built just shortly before the Second World War to be the largest and most powerful cruiser ever built for the Royal Navy. And today she is a floating museum. A little bit later on, we'll be talking to the captain of this vessel. He's been working this river for nearly 40 years, and he'll tell us what kind of changes he's seen. Joan, back to you.
Thanks, Denise, and you at home stick around. At the end of our show, we're going to have the Tower Bridge open up for us, and it's quite a sight, which it does for from Joan Rivers about the Sloane Rangers. Those are the kind of the yuppies, the in crowd here in London. But right now, Nigel Dempster, are you a yuppie?
No, I'm not even...
Are you a Sloane Ranger?
No, but I know Sloane Rangers very well. They wear particularly strange gear. They look as if they're going shooting, but they're in the middle of London. And easily identifiable.
And of course, I should say, you're with the London Daily Mail. You really know everything that's going on around this town, and I don't know how you find out some of it, but I know that last night there was a huge party, you told us about it yesterday, that was done by Major Ferguson.
It was terrible because for the first time in a month, guess what happened? It rained. And the Queen and everyone else, member of the royal family, was sloshing around because it was outside. It was in a marquee. It was on a polo field, and it cut up terrible. There was mud everywhere. And the Queen took the first floor, the first dance, and she should have had galoshes on because she was sloshing around in about a foot of water. And it was tragic because people had to come from their cars across open space. The rain just hurtled at them. And, well, it means that they've taken the rain for that party, and so tomorrow will be fine for the...
Oh, let's hope so. How does he feel about... I can't believe how much is written about Sarah's weight. I mean, they're doing the same thing in our country as here. Every day, it's up, it's down. What are the royal wedding dressmakers going to do? I can't believe how much they're talking about
it. Father, Ron, has come to her defense. He said, look, it doesn't matter whether she weighs 240 or 140 or even 40. The point is that the weight she is the weight that Prince Andrew fell in love with. It's the weight he cuddles her at, and it doesn't matter whether she's badly dressed. It's the way she dresses that Prince Andrew likes, and therefore, please, she's marrying Prince Andrew, not the media. Lay off her.
And as a matter of fact, I've heard that Prince Andrew actually helps her with her wardrobe very much.
That could explain quite a lot.
All right, now what does he think of all this? I mean,
he's delighted.
He a bit, but is
Center
he a
stage. No, he loves it because he's been brought up to do this.
Okay.
He's been in the Navy, so therefore, when he was in the Falklands, when he was here, when he was on his boat, he didn't get the publicity. This is his big moment, and he wants the day. He wants it tremendously.
But she's new to it. I mean, I hear Princess Di doesn't read anything in the press anymore. I don't know how true that is, but she probably still is.
This one just loves it. She has got a room filled with clippings, and that's just last week's. And tomorrow she's asked for a special tape to take away on their honeymoon, so that when they get on the boat, she's going to watch everything.
And they're going on their honeymoon to
the Azores, which is Portuguese waters. It's about 700-800 miles off the coast of Portugal. They're flying to Portugal. They're picking up the Royal Yacht Britannia, which has got 271 crew, a marine band, so they can pass notes underneath the marital door and say, please pay Oklahoma, or...
Just a quiet, private honeymoon. And where will they live after?
They're going to live in Buckingham Palace to begin with. He starts a course in September, which is 5 months. He goes away on Monday. He comes back on Fridays. And for those 5 months, they're going to be in Buckingham Palace, but she's looking for a house. The Queen has given them a house, £500,000, which is $750,000, and so someone
I'm sure they'll find something fitting.
Just that.
That's right. Thank you, Nigel. We'll see you later.
Sloane Ranger Handbook. Joan Rivers tells us how to find the telltale signs of a Sloane.
Quiz, what is a Sloane Ranger? Is this lady on my left with all the buttons and pins a Sloane Ranger? I don't think so. Is the gentleman behind me cleaning the fountain a Sloane Ranger? My guess is N-O. Are these girls, am I right, chatting away Sloane Rangers? Possibly. But I'll tell you one thing I do know. Sarah Ferguson, she is a Sloane Ranger. Out of the southwest of London rides a breed of man and woman so traditional, so cultured, so proper, they make you want to throw up. They have names like Henry and Caroline, and they're called the Sloane Rangers because they live or hang out in an area of London known as Sloane Square. What exactly is a Sloane Ranger?
It's someone who's in a sort of social set, and there's sort of, he goes to certain places, he wears certain clothes, he says certain things.
They like social life, more social life, and money.
Let me explain it this way. If you crossed a preppy with a yuppie with a valley girl, you'd have a Sloanie. Now, what do they wear that you don't wear? What do you wear that they don't wear?
Well, for a start, I mean, they wear clean things, you know.
A female Sloanie usually wears subdued colors, bows, pearls, anything boring. And she shops constantly at Laura Ashley, Peter Jones, and the General Trading Company, where Sarah Ferguson, by the way, is registered. What makes Sarah Ferguson a Sloane Ranger?
Well, she likes horses, her personality, her character, her hair, her shoes.
Do you think Sarah Ferguson is a Sloane Ranger?
I think she's even worse.
Right. Now it comes to Ashley. If you're a male Sloanie, your uniform looks something like this. And you hang out at the Antelope Pub and drink. Now, is Sarah Ferguson considered pretty girl?
Yeah, she's a good girl, yeah. Very nice girl.
Do you know her?
No.
Sloane Rangers love London, but they wouldn't be found dead there on weekends. On weekends, they go to country estates where they horseback ride, they hunt, and they go to incredible parties, such as this one being given tonight on the estate of Sir Francis Dashwood. It's a killer. This is not just any party, by the way. There's a lot of weird stuff here. There are 12 temples on this estate, each one with something different going on. This is incredible what you're doing. If I could have done that, my marriage would have been saved years ago.
I do love your Indian costume, I presume.
No, Turkish.
Come have a drink anyway. Come get out the way.
Sloanies love the old ways.
Oh, definitely.
Dressing up for charities, making a spectacle of themselves.
Oh, Lord.
How will I recognize a Sloane Ranger if my eyes are shut? What will they be saying?
Yeah, rather than yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They tend to slur their speech, a little bit like Americans tend to slur this Queen's English as well.
We do?
Oh, definitely, yes. Oh, yeah, rather than yes.
Really, really. Okay, yeah.
Why do Sloane Rangers hate orgies so much?
Why do Sloane Rangers hate orgies so much?
Because there's so many thank you letters to write after.
As this party ends, the Sloane Rangers board their gondolas and sail off to yet another party, to yet another engagement with destiny.
Of aspirations, but just as in the United States, there are places here in Britain where poverty and lack of education and unemployment and poverty, that it all seems to get in the way. Jeff Greenfield now takes us to just one of those places here. It's called Brixton.
This is the London that dreams are made of. The London of kings and queens and fairy tale weddings. This is the London of dreams gone bad. A neighborhood barely 3 miles from central London where Electric Avenue became the first street to be wired for light a century ago. Now it is the center of a name synonymous with trouble, Brixton.
Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, out in the street.
Brixton is a neighborhood heavily populated by the people who came to England from Jamaica and the West Indies 30 years ago, and by their children. It is a black enclave that has come to symbolize urban blight. But the worst blight may be a lack of future for Brixton's young. Even at a local borough fair, Brixton is never far from a fundamental reality, a British economy that has been sinking for decades. And the consequences of that decline can be seen and felt on the streets of Brixton nearly every day. Some of the evidence is graphic. Riots broke out in Brixton in 1981 and again in 1985, lighting the night sky. Official investigations of the riots said the young in Brixton had nothing to do. This recreational center was one response to that finding. But the root of the discontent is a national dilemma, the lack of work that has hit with special force here. Lila Hassan, editor of a black magazine.
You have people now who it's time for waking up in the day is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That you don't have a perception of waking up at 9 in the morning, getting your breakfast and getting out there. Your day begins at 4.
Because
there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do. There's no reason to get up.
Brixton's young face a job market where national unemployment has tripled since 1980. A massive youth training scheme now offers every 16-year-old a 2-year course designed to supply skills in everything from auto mechanics to hairdressing to computer work.
We run it as it is.
But Leo Brown, an 18-year-old would-be graphic designer, says the job picture is very grim.
Half the people I grew up with are unemployed, half of them. But there is no optimism left at all. They just take each day as it comes. They just sign on the dole.
As the unskilled young grow older, they face a future like that of Winston Walker. The 26-year-old has been out of work for more than 2 years. He lives with Christine John and their young son Remy in a council house, a public housing project. And they say the work just isn't there.
I do go for interviews quite regularly, but when you do go, you find there's about 20 people after the same job, you know? They say, yeah, we'll send you a letter.
When the wedding bells ring for Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, they'll be marking a tradition that's centuries old that reaches back to a distant past. But some here fear that they may be tolling for something else, for a lost sense of British national optimism. And if that sense of hope is also part of Britain's past, then what kind of future are we talking about for the young men and women of Brixton?
And we've seen a lot of strife in the streets. You know, the prison population is going to overflow yet again. You're going to see a total breakdown.
I think it'd be very hard put to find anybody who doesn't have a sneaking feeling that this isn't really what we thought this country was going to be.
Of a catchy name, we'll meet our British counterparts.
Also, as they would say here in Britain, we'll have a chat with British television personality David Frost.
And remember, tomorrow our royal coverage starts on the East Coast at 5:30 a.m.
And Mom in the Central Sector, 4:30 a.m.
And 3:30 in Mountain Time.
And 2:30 for you hardy folks out on the West Coast.
My mom has to wake up pretty early to see me, and my brother too. We'll be back with more from London. Stay with us.
This is ABC.
Weight Watchers yogurt is full of fruity flavor, but with only 150 calories.
That's out. Flavors in Weight Watchers yogurt makes it good.
It's our anniversary, our 40th here at Norman Regional Hospital. But we're not just counting the candles on our cake. We're counting all the things we've done to become one of Oklahoma's great health care centers. But no matter how much we've grown over the years, we'll never outgrow our care and concern for each individual patient. Norman Regional Hospital, we're at 40 and counting, serving people all over South Central Oklahoma. People who count on us to offer so much, so close.
Summer's here and the heat is on, but your air conditioning isn't. At Hill & Company Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, we'll save you money on replacing your system from our Ambassador line through our high-efficiency Elite condensers. Right now, Hill & Company will install a Train 2-ton Ambassador condensing unit for only $675. We also service all other brands of air conditioning. Call us today. We'll beat the heat and everyone's prices. Hill & Company, Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, the Train dealer that speaks with volume.
We're here on the River Thames. It is so beautiful here, and you can't help but see right behind us. That's the Tower Bridge. It's over 100 years old. It is still open to the heaviest traffic in London every day, and it is one sturdy bridge.
And it's a good thing because people are coming from all over the world, just as we have for this royal wedding. Coming up in this hour, well, we're going to talk to British television personality David Frost, and we're going to meet the folks from Good Morning Britain, that catchy little name. In fact, they came over and watched our program before they ever went on the air, and it was very interesting to share some time with them this morning. So they're going to be with us, and we're also going to have a tour of her beautiful home in Bath from Jane Seymour.
Oh, and Jane Seymour will also have an exclusive interview with Prince Philip. But right now, we'll go back to Washington, where Kathleen...
When it was built, 1078 up to about 1600, because it was the safest place around. Now, believe it or not, there are still some people who live here in the tower, and I'd like you to meet a couple of them. This is Yeoman Warder John Kenny. Hello, John.
Hello
and
there.
His wife, Maureen. What's it like living here in this big, old, cold, drafty place, I would think?
Well, it isn't really as cold and drafty as you imagine, really. Once all the tourists around, it's almost like a small village, really.
Yeah.
Living in, we all live in our own little houses around the Tower Green, and we have our own little pub here.
How many people? How many families?
Well, there's right in the region of about 55 to 60 families, isn't there, that are living in the tower.
What are the accommodations like? Are they modern?
Very modern inside, very ancient outside.
Well, as they look.
Yeah.
Now, you're a yeoman warder. What does that mean? What's a yeoman warder?
Well, a yeoman warder is basically the custodian of the tower. We're here to guard, to guide, and defend the tower, and its heritages, of course, and, of course, the crown jewels, which are held in the Tower of London.
Mm-hmm. Who started this position? How old is it?
Well, the body of yeoman warders goes back over 700 years or more, but our actual role as yeoman warders of the tower goes back to around about 1509, on the death of Henry VII.
Mm-hmm.
When Henry VII died, Henry VIII, or a young Henry VIII, came to the tower to do his grieving in private, and he brought along with him 15 or so yeomen of the guard, which were in fact formed by his father, Henry VII, and he brought these into the tower during his mourning, and then when he left the tower after his brief period of mourning, he then left the yeoman warders in the tower, and they've been in the Tower of London as yeoman warders of the tower ever since that period.
And they call you guys beefeaters. Why?
Indeed. Well, again, it's an anomaly that's crept over the years, and no one really knows the significance of it. In fact, it's purely a nickname that's been handed down through the centuries, and it was so insignificant it was never even recorded. But one of the theories put forward, or two of the theories put forward, is one, that it comes from the old Norman word, buffeteer, which in actual fact meant to wait on the king's table, to taste his beef and make sure it wasn't poisoned. And also, during the reign of Henry VIII, he paid us half in cash and half in kind. And the kind, in fact, was beef. And it was the Londoners themselves who first coined the phrase, the beef eaters of the Tower.
Well, now we know. Thanks very much for joining us. I wish we had a little more time because I'm told by these folks there have been sightings of ghosts around here. Not by them, but by other people. But that's another story. Steve Bell, back to you.
And thank you, Steve Fox. Now,
Morning, obviously, they don't watch Good Morning America, but they do, many of them, watch Good Morning Britain. That makes sense. Actually, there are two morning shows here. The hosts of Good Morning Britain are Ann Diamond and Nick Owen, and those who tune in the morning can limber up with Lizzie.
One and up. Or you can swing it, but that's harder. Left across and open.
And then there are the interviews, and here's one with British comedian Pamela Stevens. And remember, of course, the English are noted for their dry, sophisticated wit.
I was just thinking about poor Nick, you know, because apparently he's on the world's most boring men list. He was just telling me this morning he is number 6, which I think is absolutely brilliant. You know, I could help you with that.
Could you? How would you do that?
Stand up for a minute. Just stand up. Right.
Ah, yeah. Okay, I think that'll do for now. I think we'll probably stop here, don't you?
Get him down. Come on, hold his arms. Hold his arms.
Will this make me interesting or you interesting?
Grab his goalies, quick. Get his goalies.
I can't. I'm hoping you keep some time here.
What have you done here?
Ah, yes, dry, sophisticated wit. Nick and Ann, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
We can.
Oh, good morning.
Good
morning.
Does that, you're a jolly good old sport there, Nick. Does that happen often on your program?
No, after the program, yes, but not during it.
I should let our audience in on a little something. Steve Bell and I were on your program this morning. It looked remarkably like home. And I should say that many people from your show came over years ago and sat in our studio many mornings and watched, and your show's very much modeled after ours, is it not?
It is quite a bit, yes, and especially the sofa here and the colours. We try to have a sort of warm glow in our colours, and that's what you do. It hit me when the minute I walked into your studio. You have a lovely warm orange glow, and that's what we've tried to copy here a little bit.
Yes, we try to be as informal as possible and make people feel that we're part of their living room at home. And, of course, the name we very much got from you.
All right, now when you say informal, though, that's something I've really noticed, not only about your program, but many of the programs, the presenters, as you call them, are very dressed down. I mean, there are weathermen in their sweaters, and Nick, this morning you had your jacket off, and that's unlike in our country. I think there's a misconception of Americans that the Americans have of you, that British are very prim and proper and almost a little uptight and very dressed up. Is that a misconception we have of you?
No, in actual fact, you see, they're scruffy like Nick.
Yes.
Just completely scruffy.
I can't help it. I am a bit of a rough diamond. She's Ann Diamond, I'm a rough diamond. The thing is, we reckon that if people are at home feeling a bit rough in the morning and they're getting up and they're in the curlers, I'm thinking mostly about the women now, and they see us looking very smart, they'll feel a bit uncomfortable and out of place. And if we're looking sort of fairly casual as well, they might feel a bit more relaxed about having us in their room.
Yeah, so about 6:15 in the morning, I come in with my curlers and take them out gradually during the programme.
Yeah, scaffolding around her face
yes,
to try to bring it round.
So that everybody really identifies with you. All right, everybody asks me what time I wake up in the morning. About 3:45, 4 o'clock. What time do you wake up?
3 o'clock.
2:58.
2:58.
He wakes up at 2:58.
Is he always
alarm clock?
Does he try to get one up on you there?
Yeah, I can't get my alarm clock to go dead on 3, so it's always 2:58. And I'm having a shower by 3:45 at the office. I come straight in and get washed and everything
and
here,
I come
really.
straight in and I get the tea for him.
Because she's a woman.
Okay,
I know
we'll leave that one alone. Okay, Nick, were you really voted one of the dullest men in Great Britain?
I know, it's a bit hurtful, isn't it? I mean, if I was going to be in a chart of dull people, at least I could have been top. I was 6th.
You were 6th?
I was in the same list as the Queen, you know, and Fidel Castro. So I was quite excited with the company.
Well,
but,
we had a jolly good time with you this morning, actually.
Well, we enjoyed having you.
Talking to you, talking to somebody who's got the same problems about getting up early in the morning.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining our broadcast today.
It's good to talk to you.
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
good. Good morning, America.
Good morning, America, indeed.
And cheerio to you both. And we'll be back with David Frost.
From Britain, David Frost, and he's with us this morning. David.
Top of the morning.
So great
Lovely
to have
be
you
with you, Steve.
You also have a new book out, and I am going to, you know, we've just had this discussion about differences between morning television in Britain and the United States. Right. You have a new book out on differences between Americans and the British.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to let you say the title because it's marvelous, and then tell us what it is.
Well, it's called The Mid-Atlantic Companion, How to Misunderstand Americans as Well as They Misunderstand Us. When it comes out in America, it could be the other way around, because it's intended for both. It was really inspired, in fact, by my first ever trip to America. When I went over to America to do that, was the week that was, and I said the highest compliment that an Englishman can pay it. Someone did a piece, and I said, "Congratulations, your piece went like a bomb." Well, needless to say, poor guy's face dropped. And I came back here and I said to Randolph Churchill, I explained the story. He said, yes, he said, and they have another word in America for disaster, to lay an egg. He said, now, I would have thought that laying an egg was a good and natural thing for a hen to do, but not over there, you know. And so this whole classic thing, the classic English matron who went to New York and rang down to the bell captain and said, you know, knock me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, and got a form of room service she wasn't entirely anticipating. All of that was the inspiration for this book, because we are different in so many different ways. And I suppose this week's highlights one of them, too.
Absolutely. All right, you happen to be a friend of Prince Andrew. And here, you know, all the randy-andy, we've heard it all, and it's certainly codified his early image, to say the least. But what changes have you seen in this young man as he has matured to the Prince we know today?
Well, I think, funnily enough, that going back about 3 years ago, when I first interviewed him, it was his first interview, and something came over in that interview which was a surprise, given the tremendous sort of playful image that he had, as if it was all play and no work, as it were. And this was after his trip to the Falklands, of course, where he distinguished himself. But what came over in that interview was that on his own, in a solitary sense, he was a thinker and a muser, and his image was two-dimensional. And out of that interview, one got an impression, which I think is something that the world will come to see more and more, that in addition to being dashing with a great sense of humor and all of that, I think he will surprise people by the serious things he does, that he is a serious man. When you see him in a group of people, he singles out the serious people to have a long chat with, as well as the light-hearted one. So I would say that that's going to be the thing people will see about it.
All right, what about marriage? What do you think suddenly made this young man say, hey, played the field for a lot of years,
well,
now's the time?
I think it was just, I mean, it's not really for me to say that, it's for them to say, obviously, and, but I mean, I would say it was just, you know, spontaneous combustion, and...
That's the right girl.
And they're just superb for each other.
All right, you have always been the #1 jet setter, in the sense that you have jetted back and forth between the States but here, and you've done television in both countries. You're not doing that so much anymore. Why?
Well, I'm partially because I've got 2 small children, so I try and make 1 trip a month rather than 1 trip a week to the States. You know, I'm still very important in terms of British Airways' balance of credit at the end of the year, you know, and there have been years when I was their sole profit.
You're saving your frequent flyer.
Yes, if only that had started 20 years ago, I'd never have to pay for a flight ever again, you know. But in fact, I've got 2 specials coming out with the spitting image puppets. I don't know whether you've heard about them here, on NBC in September. So I'm still doing specials, and look forward to traveling more, and as the children get to 3, they can come in.
The 2 children.
The 2 children, Miles, age 2, and Wilfred, age 1. They both got their own passport, and Miles has done 3 trips to the States, and Wilfred's done 1.
And we'll have more with a very proud...
Good morning again from London. I'm Joan Lunden.
And I'm Steve Bell.
And we're only 1 day away now from the big royal wedding, and it is a very exciting time to be here in London. Right behind me, you can see the Tower Bridge, and of course it has been there over 100 years, just as you see it. Well, not exactly just as you see it. The power that raises the middle of the bridge that lets the tall ships through used to be hydraulic. It is now electric.
And electric is just the word to describe our Jane Seymour, actress and wonderful woman who's going to take us in a tour this half hour of her estate in Bath. And she's also got an exclusive interview with Prince Philip, the father-in-law-to-be of Sarah Ferguson. And also now, let's go to Washington for the latest news with Kathleen Solomon. Kathleen?
Hello, Steve. Good morning, everyone. President Reagan today faces growing congressional criticism as he prepares for a major speech on South Africa. After meeting with the president yesterday, Republican leaders warned that the Senate will likely vote for economic sanctions, even if the president fails to heed the call. But despite that, the president is not expected to seek sanctions in today's address. Overseas, a surprise move toward peace in the Middle East today. Israel's Prime Minister Shimon Peres has gone to Morocco, where he's meeting with King Hassan, but few details are known. Hassan is only the second Arab leader to meet with an Israeli Prime Minister. And in reaction, Syria has broken off diplomatic relations with Morocco. In Central California, cleanup continues today from yesterday's powerful earthquake. It measured 6.2 on the Richter scale, the fourth in only 2 weeks. No one was seriously hurt, but the earthquake damaged some 150 homes near the town of Bishop, and sharp aftershocks rattled some nerves.
How do you personally feel? Did it frighten you this morning?
Yes, it did. Definitely so. Ooh,
Another rumble.
Ooh, let's get out from underneath this.
Well, despite growing fears, seismology experts say the recent number of earthquakes...
Procession. Nancy Reagan is here, not officially as America's First Lady, but as a private guest of the royal family. Prince Andrew's bride, Sarah Ferguson, may be nervous, but she went through a wedding rehearsal in her bare feet. The bridesmaids and pages are obviously excited. The Royal Navy has baked a 5-tier, 5-foot-6-inch wedding cake to be cut into 2,000 pieces. And just in case the cake should be damaged, the Navy has baked an exact standby duplicate. Several thousand police, reportedly backed up by elite and largely secret SAS anti-terrorist units, have been combing the processional route. Specially trained dogs are patrolling Westminster Abbey, where the ceremony will take place. They've even sniffed out explosives, planted by police as a test. The boys' choir is ready. Well, almost ready.
No, that's the wrong note. 4, 5, 6.
One group of Britons are celebrating early. After the wedding, they'll be a bit busy. Mike Lee, ABC News, London.
And it's now 34 past the hour. Dave Murray and
It is now 39 after. It's always great to go to a new place with someone who knows it well. Well, the wonderful actress Jane Seymour lives about an hour outside of London in a beautiful city called Bath. And she takes us now on a personal tour through a place that she truly loves.
When I was studying at school, one of my favorite authors, great romantic novelist, was Jane Austen. And Jane Austen wrote a great deal about Bath. And she wrote about this beautiful, elegant city that was moody and romantic and passionate. And it's the most elegant city I've ever seen. It probably is one of the first tourist resorts in England. It has the Roman baths, which are magical and are beautifully done. This warm mineral water is just pouring out of the earth.
I suppose the thing that amazes me the most is how old this place is. 7,000 years ago, hunters came here, and they used the waters. Of course, the baths hadn't been built then. The Romans came, and they did this extraordinary architecture and built the baths, plus temples, of course, to the goddesses and the goddess of water. And that's how the city got its name, Bath.
I infinitely prefer it to London. I think it's far more fun. I buy a lot of antique clothes there.
Oh, must resist.
The great part about it is that you're just pushing through these millions of people in the streets of Bath, and you climb into your car and just go down this little lane that no one even knows exists, and suddenly you're in the 15th century. Well, I pinch myself every morning. I can't believe that we live here.
Mommy, does that feel good?
Katie sort of tries to emulate me a little bit, I think. In fact, one of her favorite games is fixing my hair and braiding it and sort of basically pretending I'm her Barbie doll, I think. Well, I gave birth to Sean, almost gave birth to Sean here in this house. It's such a lovely experience to lie and look out on the countryside and just enjoy being pregnant. Can you imagine not having a house like this and this extraordinary barn, but your own church and a congregation that goes with it? At Christmas time, sometimes they ask me to read a lesson. We're part of a community.
A most extraordinary thing happened when we bought the house. I told my family about it, and my sister told me that my first boyfriend was buried in our churchyard. He died when he was 24, and his family moved out here, and we had no idea. So sometimes I feel like it's almost fate that we're living here.
A lot of people say to us, how can you live so far out in the countryside? I mean, don't you ever get bored? And one of the most important things, I think, to David and I is family.
Okay, you can put dots, heart dots up there.
Heart dots?
You can use this one for her.
How pretty do you think this is?
It's very pretty.
Mommy, are you doing it the same? You need windows, Mommy.
We turned what was a sort of massive building, a 34-room house, into a cozy place where we can really be a family. And it's a great place for children, and they all run free and play with the animals.
They're all around us. Hi, Rosie. Come stroke the fox.
I think if people learn to love animals, then they really are much better at learning to love other human beings.
Oh, Katie, this one loves you. This is going to be your pony when it's bigger.
I know.
We have an unbelievable sense of peace here. There's a feeling of the centuries gone by and of happiness in this house. There's something extraordinarily peaceful and special and spiritual about this place.
Oh, thank you, Jane Seymour. We'll be back with a trip down the Thames. Stay with us.
Where Steve Fox has a medieval fashion report for us. Steve?
Steve, about the year 1520, this would be, in fact, the height of fashion if your business was jousting and bashing other people about the head and shoulders and bodies with swords and lances and that kind of thing. This armor was made for Henry VIII, and he was a big guy, as you can see. He stood 6'1", and his armor weighed 110 pounds. Now, until 1850, the Tower of London was the official armory for the entire country, so they had one of the greatest collections in the world of weapons and gear and armor. And Ian Eves here is the keeper of the armory. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us. Who wore this stuff? Was this worn for pageantry or for warfare?
Well, the armour that you see here was in fact worn by the ordinary soldiers of the 17th century, mainly at the time of the English Civil War.
But did they wear, most of the armour that was it made to go into battle with, or for guys to strut around?
The main purpose of armour was to go into battle, although obviously tournament armours were made and some very rich armours were made just to parade in front of the people.
Yeah. We have with us a real live model, Tracy Brown, in some of the armor. Tell me about this armor.
Well, this armour was made in Nuremberg, South Germany, about 1530, 1540. It was obviously made for a teenage boy. We don't know who, but it would obviously have been somebody of a princely rank.
Is it comfortable? Can you move around?
Yes, I can move around quite easily, actually. My arms up and down.
Is it hot in there?
It's not too bad, actually.
Do you feel like you can move in battle if you had to? Could you joust?
If I was trained,
Yeah.
then I would be able to, I'm sure.
Yeah. One of the things I want to point out to you, Tracy's only 5'1". She is wearing her high heels to be big enough for this armor. Well, that's it from here. We're now going to go join Denise Yamada somewhere out on the River Thames. Denise?
Good morning, Steve. We're still heading downriver on the Thames on board the Cabby, a sailing barge with Captain John Fairbrother, who's been working the river for 38 years. Good morning, John. What kind of changes have you seen on the river during all these years?
Oh, mostly I think the river has got a lot cleaner than it used to be. I mean, it was pretty dirty once upon a time. I mean, if I clean that 9 o'clock in the morning...
The compass?
The compass. Clean this brass, you see. 2 hours it would be purple. 4 hours after that it would be black, absolutely black. And you know, the river was black. Everything was black, you know.
I understand in the 1950s the river was so filthy that it could not support any kind of fish life, but that's not the case anymore, is it?
No, I understand that there is, they've even caught a salmon, they tell me. I mean, I don't know, but rumour has it a salmon has been caught. It must be further up north than here.
What about traffic? You must have seen a great change in traffic patterns over the past 38 years.
Well, yes. The river, I'm afraid, has died. The Thames has died. There's no commercial traffic. I mean, when I started, if you would chuck a penny in the river, you would hit something. You'd hit a smack or a craft of some sort of vessel, rowing boat, tug, anything, you see. There'd be hundreds of them about. I mean, if you think this is busy now, it's nothing. I mean, no wonder bargemen went grey, because yeah, it was dreadful.
Okay, well, you and I will talk about where we're headed in just a few minutes, but for now, Steve Bell, back to you.
Thank you, Denise. Next river trip's mine. Coming up, we're going to...
It is now 9 minutes before the hour. What do you do in your spare time when you're married to the Queen of England? Well, Prince Philip, as it turns out, takes an occasional spin in his horse and carriage. And the other day, Jane Seymour went along and brought back this exclusive interview with the Prince.
Welcome to Floors Castle in Scotland. Prince Andrew's father, Prince Philip, is here to take part in the very British sport of horse carriage driving and to talk to me exclusively for Good Morning America.
The horses I use all come from the Mews. In fact, all the horses I'm driving this afternoon will be taking part in the wedding procession.
That was going to be my next question. Do you know which ones will be driving the
I think
coach?
all four of them, all five of them. Oh, no, they won't be on that coach. They'll be one of the coaches.
Are there special horses that will be used for the wedding couple?
Well, they'll probably use greys, actually.
But so they're going to go for colour rather than quality?
Oh, no. But there are both grey horses in the Mews and bays. In the last wedding, I had one of these horses and one other. And my coachman, who normally sits on the back of this thing when I'm driving, was driving me. All five that I've got here are all homebred.
Really?
Yeah, we drove their mothers years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It helps a lot, you know, you can tell. You know, children sometimes take after their parents. Well, horses do too. So you know what to expect of them.
Are you breeding some more of these right now?
Yes, they're still breeding.
Do any other members of the family take part in driving?
No, they take part in breeding, but not in...
We're aware of that.
Well, I'm breeding horses, too.
Oh, horses.
You're one-track mind.
I'm a breeder myself of both, but... I was going to say, is it very dangerous?
No, not dangerous. Only you can have accidents, yes. But I mean, you don't have to have accidents. You can have accidents doing anything.
That's true.
Yeah, but what's he done on the front, look? Leading from the nostrils. Yeah, he's got nostrils. Here.
You're off breather.
Take him out. Yeah. Walk on. Walk on.
And this carriage, is this an old one, a very old one?
No, they're all brand new. This is all theirs. This is all metal. And it's got aluminium wheels. So it's got disc brakes at the back there.
So tell us how this differs from the American way of driving.
Well, I'm not sure that I know the American way.
Well, the stagecoach, you know, isn't that a two-handed...
We used to have stagecoaches here, too.
Really? I suppose
it
it must have been where they started, eh?
Well, I've no idea, but I mean, the stagecoach was merely meant you had a coach that went in stages, and every stage you changed horses.
Right.
And you changed a team of horses about every 10 miles. And the horses would do one stage of 10 miles in the morning one direction, and they'd take another coach back the other 10 miles. And you could go anywhere in this country at about an average speed of 10 miles an hour by stagecoach. And then, of course, they had the mail coaches, and that they took the Royal Mail through, and they had fewer passengers, but they went very accurately to time. I think if you watch the American stagecoaches, yes, they drove two-handed, but I drive two-handed on this, but one-handed on that. The only point about one-handed driving is that you have all four reins in one hand, which means you've got the other hand free to, you know, scratch your ear or wipe your nose or something. And you hold the whip in this hand. And if you're going straight down the road, you don't need any more than that. In any case, you can steer them by moving your hand to and fro a bit. If you want to go around the corner, you simply use this hand to pull and take a loop, and round they go.
Right, that's what amazed me today when I had my mini lesson, was that the horses, some are going in that direction and the others are going quite in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and sometimes the carriage is going in the third direction.
We shouldn't talk about that, should we?
Well, sometimes it's intended. It's like driving a double-articulated vehicle from the rear.
That's true.
And we'll be right back with more from London. Well, that's it for today, but remember that tomorrow our live coverage of the royal wedding starts. Eastern time, 5:30 a.m.
Midwestern time, 4:30 a.m.
And Mountain time, 3:30
a.m. And on the West Coast, 2:30 a.m. for the Stout of Heart. And we're going to have also portions of an interview tomorrow with Princess, well, not Princess yet, with Sarah and with Prince Andrew. And
look at this behind us, what's going on right now.
Denise Yamada aboard the boat. Denise, hi.
Steve, this is the moment that we've been waiting for all this morning while we've been traveling down the River Thames. The bridge is opening now. You know, the bascules of the drawbridge, the part that actually opens, weighs 1,100 tons, and never once since the bridge has been operating have the bascules failed. Let's hope they don't today. It's been a beautiful trip down the Thames, and listen, I talked with Captain Fairbrother, and he would be willing to take all of us back to New York, so maybe we'll get a head start and see our guys later. Steve and Joe, back to you.
It's opening up for you beautifully.
And I don't know if people can see it, but could you see the double-decker bus there on the bridge? All the traffic is backed up, and you can actually see, there it is. Look at the double-decker bus there, which you see here in London all over the streets, everywhere you go, but it's fun for us to see, isn't it?
Today we saw a traffic jam of them
double-decker buses, too.
The studio.
All right, tomorrow, live coverage. Don't miss it. We'll see you tomorrow.
Join us.
Thanks. Cheerio.
Travel arrangements provide